That was a great intro to our 2022 event of the Green Week. And good afternoon and a warm welcome. And we are really happy to have you now in the room, but also we have a very large online audience. Actually, the Green Week is Europe's biggest environmental policy event, and it's back on track. And we are very proud to have it back on track. Because after 2 very challenging years, where we were confined and where we can finally now meet in person, we are ready to take up the debate. We are, as I said, joined also by a large online audience, and everybody is welcome. We have a very exciting week ahead of us, and actually we had built it around a very powerful slogan. You hear it here, Green Deal, make it real. Because the last few years were a bit like we're going from one crisis to another. We had COVID, we had everything else, economic, and now we have the war. And these are partly short-term shocks, but partly shocks that will stay and profoundly change Europe. But we also have not to forget the long-term challenges that are not going away. And therefore, we have to continue on the transformations, the sustainable transformation. And we have to have you, the audience, but also all the people out there who will have to help us to start living, working, and producing in a different way inside the planetary boundaries. So for the next 2 days, we will be exploring very innovative ways of implementing the very ambitious Green Deal targets. And for those who have forgotten what is the Green Deal is the major policy framework that President von der Leyen set at the beginning of her commission. And we will be asking what the deal means in practice, what it really takes to transform, and especially in times of crisis. Is it still relevant? Do we still have the possibility to make this transformation of Europe into a circular, a nature positive and a zero pollution Europe and a different type of economy, a circular economy, the one that we want? This morning, the Commission already had a great debate with 30 brilliant young Europeans, very engaged, and they were discussing precisely that. Nature protection, sustainable textiles, and pollution. So we have a very rich program in front of us. And after this opening, you will also have the LIFE Awards, because it's very inspirational to have LIFE projects, and we are very proud of the LIFE program. And this year, LIFE turns 30, so it's really a good anniversary to celebrate it in the Green Week. It's really a milestone for us. Tomorrow we have 3 sessions, and they all put a spotlight on one of our key policy areas, on circularity, on pollution, and on nature protection. And finally, we will have to close the Brussels part of the Green Week with a very high-level debate of turning ideas into action under the Green Deal, and then we have a celebration of the Eco-label, which also turns 30 this year. So lots of 30 years in the Green Week anniversary. But of course, the Green Week is not just what we do here in Brussels. It is also actually taking a movement across Europe. It's actually 300 events that are taking place in regions, in cities, to mark what is the Green Deal and how to make it real. Now, all of this is about people who care and people who dare to really turn that change into reality. But now let's turn to the opening session. The opening session is about a very sensitive and very topical topic of discussion. When we were thinking about how to plan the Green Deal, the Russian aggression and the war in Ukraine happened. And that is the most brutal reality that we are now facing. So we thought that we better address this issue head on, because is environment policy still relevant in the face of such crisis? We knew that in pandemic we survived with a Green Deal, but do we have now different types of challenges? So we are asking really, what is the role of environment in such a situation? And how can we respond? So it's a great honor to have three very eminent speakers with us today. We have Commissioner Sinkevičius, the Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries. And then we have a really premier, Ruslan Strilets, who is the Minister of Ukraine for the Environmental Protection and Natural Resources. And we have Katja Tütow, who is the chair of the European Committee of the Regions Commission for the Environment, Climate Change and Energy. All the three big topics that today we have to address. So I will be asking the three panelists about their views. What is the place of environment policy today in the face of such a threat like a war, but also the implications it has, not only for Ukraine, also for Europe, actually for the world? And what is the best response? But before doing so, we would want to give the President of the European Commission, President von der Leyen, the opportunity to speak to you. Some of you will know that we have currently the European Summit ongoing today and tomorrow, so she can't be with us, but it is for sure that she is attaching an enormous amount to her Green Deal, and obviously is also wanting to do all the commitments necessary to make sure that we help Ukraine in every manner we can. So I think we should be, I don't know where, but we will be listening and seeing the President of the European Commission, Mrs. von der Leyen.
Distinguished guests, dear friends, for the first time since we started our mandate at the European Commission, the European Green Week is back with in-person events aside the virtual ones, and that's great. We aim at bringing together the people who are turning the European Green Deal into reality. Activists, investors, academics, start-uppers, you name it, and people who are simply passionate about our planet. You are making it real. But allow me to also mention some of those who cannot be with us today. A few weeks ago, Fridays for Future activists from Ukraine and Russia came to Brussels together to ask Europe to stop buying Russian fossil fuels. For years, Russian activists have been speaking up about the devastating impacts of climate change in their country. And for this, they have been harassed, arrested, or forced into exile. But they haven't been silenced. And today, they are also raising their voice against the Kremlin's aggression of Ukraine. And we've heard their call. In recent weeks, we introduced bans on Russian coal, and we launched Repower EU, our new plan to end our dependency on Russian gas. We already know that what's good for the planet is also good for our economy. But now we know that it is vital to our freedom too. The last 2 years have shed new light on two challenges that we must tackle as a matter of urgency, and that's overdependence and overexploitation. The first one, overdependence, has to do, of course, with Russian fossil fuels. But it's not just that. Our supply chains rely enormously on goods and raw materials that we import at a high cost for the planet. Russian fertilizers, based on fossil fuels. Minerals and chips from East Asia. The pandemic may feel like a distant memory, but new lockdowns, for instance in port cities like Shanghai, have direct repercussions on us. And both COVID and the war in Ukraine have taught us that overdependence on polluting imports is simply unsustainable. And the same goes for the overexploitation of our environment. The United Nations have just issued a stark warning. 40% of the world's land is now degraded. This is disastrous for biodiversity, for the climate, and also for the global economy. Land degradation puts at risk roughly half of the world's annual economic output. But there are solutions, and we know that they can pay off. The UN calculates that every euro spent in land restoration brings an economic return of 7 to 30 euros. We can build a better economy that gives back to the planet instead of taking away from it. At this European Green Week, we have decided to focus on 3 solutions to the ongoing nature crisis. First, the circular economy. Second, investing in biodiversity. And third, working with third countries to protect our shared planet. Now, on the circular economy, we have all been told that a fridge or a dishwasher, which broke down the day after the guarantee had expired, were impossible to repair. This doesn't only produce too much trash, it also wastes precious energy and raw materials. And this is why we have just presented new rules for sustainable products. In 2021 alone, eco-design requirements saved consumers 100 billion euros. The energy we will save by 2030 with these new rules is equivalent to 1 year of our current Russian gas imports. Second, European citizens who gathered at the Conference for the Future of Europe asked very clearly that we better protect our nature and biodiversity. And the cost of pollution is increasingly clear. A recent study shows that we pay over 2 billion euros every year only to decontaminate water or to take care of farmers who are poisoned by harmful chemicals. In the next weeks, we will put forward our proposal for nature restoration law. A healthier relationship with nature means a healthier economy too. Thirdly, our commitment to nature spans beyond our borders. At the end of last year, we proposed a new regulation to ensure that only deforestation-free products enter the EU market. We all know that forests are not only vital to our cultural heritage and our economies, they are also our best ally in the fight against climate change and nature loss. Goods that drive deforestation should find no place in our market. And at the same time, we are proposing to build forest partnerships with selected countries or regions to restore their forest and create good jobs that respect the environment. We are putting our geopolitical and our economic power at our planet's service. With the European Green Deal, we are redefining our relationship with planet Earth. Europe is finally heading in the right direction. The pandemic and the war should only make us shift gears. It's time to speed up. It's time we make it real. So thank you for your attention, and I wish you a great European Green Week.
I think this was a brilliant scene setter by the person who was really setting the Green Deal on our agenda, but also who is steering our fight against climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution and deforestation, as she was mentioning, all crises that are now so much exacerbated by the Russian aggression in Ukraine. And therefore putting all these crises a bit into question. I would like to ask our Commissioner Sinkevičius, to come to the podium. Please come over there, and to the lectern, because we would like to hear from you, your opening statement, how you see these crises unfolding and what your reply would be, please.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. And first of all, of course, I would like to start by welcoming our special guests, Minister of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources of Ukraine, my friend, Ruslan Strelets. I'm very happy that you could make it. I know it's not an easiest times, but I really appreciate that you're here. And that's another sign that EU and Ukraine will be working very close to, first of all, end the war, but secondly, to rebuild a wonderful Ukraine. And you know, the situation is not easy, but you will rebuild Ukraine on the lessons that we did, building our cities, and it will be even better. We originally designed this Green Week, of course, around the Green Deal. But after the Russian invasion, we very quickly realized that we had to find a way of including our current reality and bring Ukraine into our discussions. And when we talk about climate crisis, biodiversity loss, pollution and so forth, we describe them as existential threats, which they truly are. But in Ukraine, it's the very foundation of the environment which is at stake. You can't worry about protecting your climate, ecosystems, and biodiversity when everything is lost during a rapid attack. Ukraine will prevail, and I'm sure of that. And while the war continues with devastating impacts on people, the economy, and the environment, the Commission is working on a comprehensive plan to support the recovery of Ukraine. And for the country's long-term recovery, it will be key to ensure the green transition and increased resilience become part of the reconstruction efforts. Because, of course, Ukraine is a highly developed country. When we take that approach during the reconstruction, we are actually building on our joint pre-war understanding about the importance of the green transition. And if we will hear from, and as we will hear from Minister Strelets in a couple minutes, there is a large-scale damage and environmental degradation caused by the war in many different areas, from major cities to agricultural areas, forests, of course, pollution into rivers. And of course, rebuilding of country is not going to be an easy task. It will be a challenge, but with sustainability at the heart, at the forefront, the reconstruction can be a tremendous opportunity. It's not a situation that anyone would ever choose, but it is a situation where some outcomes will bring significant advantage in the longer term. And it will be a chance for Ukraine to shine, showcasing the potential benefits of a bold transition. The reason we have chosen this title for the opening is that there will be lessons to the European Union as well. We will learn things about our agenda as a result of the conflict. We rediscover the importance of things we take for granted, like clean water or clean air. But as I hope to show throughout our sessions today, we remain committed, not just to the ideals of the European Green Deal, but to the way it works in practice, on the ground. It's a deal we share. It's a deal with advantages for all of us. And it's a deal in the long-term interested for everyone here, from Brussels all the way to Ukraine, but it's a deal for the whole planet. So thank you very much for being here, and I hope that this week will be very enriching, and we will, of course, continue our agenda forward despite any difficulties. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. If you could sit in the middle. Thank you very much. And indeed, it is a great honor. And we are very deeply impressed that you made it to Brussels, Minister Strelets. I have to say, please come also to the podium for your welcome statement. I have to say to the audience and also for the people online, we have interpretation to and from English, French, and into Ukrainian. And I already used the occasion to thank the interpreters for their kind assistance. So thank you very much. And Minister, it's your floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I thank you for this opportunity to be here. On February 24, we in Ukraine got awake at 5 a.m. to the sound of bombing. Then we read in media headlines about how the world changed irreversibly, and it will never be the same. And we see these changes with our own eyes. My name is Ruslan Strelets. I am the head of Ministry of Ecology of Ukraine. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, we have been monitoring and documenting the Russian crimes against nature. We have already recorded 257 cases of ecocide and counted 1,500 cases of nature destruction. I deliberate don't specify that Russians are destroying the Ukrainian environment itself. It's not only about Ukraine. Let's not forget that a drop of water in the Pacific Ocean once traveled off the shores of our Black Sea. Russian missiles over the Ukraine nuclear power plants are the world's problem. The oil in our rivers after Russian bombing of gas station is the world's problem. Industrial chemicals in Ukrainian soil and are the world's problem. The Ukrainian forest fired by the Russians are the world problem. To realize the scale of the destruction, let's focus on forests. The total area of forest fires increased by 45 times in comparison with 2021. During the 3 months of the war, the Russians damaged 3,000 hectares of forest. It is half the size of the Republic of San Marino. 500,000 hectares of forest are Russian-occupied lands and war zone. This is more than half of territory of Cyprus. Only in the Kherson region, 4,000 hectares of forest have been engulfed by fire. Imagine a fire size is 20 principalities of Monaco. And Russian occupiers don't allow us to put out these fires. No amount of money can be a fair price. Life is priceless. Nature is priceless. Everything alive around us is priceless. But we must name the cost of the crime. And it must be a matter for the whole world. Countries interested in solving the environmental crisis must join us. Today, we are preparing lawsuits for international courts. Ukraine will demand compensation from Russia for the destruction of nature. Each resident of the earth must understand that if his country starts war, he will pay for it out of his pocket. Humanity must understand that war is expensive. Every state must understand that war is expensive. To attack another country, bombing cities, destroying forests, blowing up oil depots and polluting rivers, destroying the environment is expensive. Our action right now determines whether this remains a theory of fait accompli. It must become a fait accompli. Ignoring this issue now means allowing similar scenario in the future. Thank you very much, and we hope that all countries of Europe will help Ukraine to be winner in this war. Thank you, Virginijus Sinkevičius, for his opportunity. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Would you sit? Thank you so much, Minister Strelets, for drawing the attention to the devastating and an enormous impact on the environmental damage. I know that, of course, in a war, we always think, and you think, first of the people, of the citizen, of the state, but there are damages that are much more long-lasting and will have an impact even when hostilities will have ceased to exist. So thank you for giving us that insight, and we will discuss further. Now it is also my pleasure to welcome Mrs. Kata Tütto. She is the chair of the European Committee of the Regions, ENVI Committee or Commission, to deliver her opening statement. Please.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm here to represent the cities. Beside being a member of the European Committee of the Regions, I'm also Deputy Mayor of Budapest, responsible for public transport, waste, water, all the stuff we have to deal with. So I have to give you a glimpse of my past 2.5 years, what was happening. We just finished our sustainable urban mobility program. We, Budapest, like many other European cities, just accepted their sustainable climate and energy action plans, knowing how to transform our cities. And then came the pandemic, and we had to rethink everything. We were trying to connect our citizens in public spaces, and now from one moment to the other, we had to keep people away. We tried to convince everyone earlier to use public transport and put down their cars. In 1 month, everybody was leaving public transport, leaving huge damages in trust in public transport, going back to their cars. Earlier, we were convincing everyone to move back to cities. The pandemic came and people started going in the sprawl and doing really something very different than we were expecting. And we were mayors just learning the difference between FFP2 and FFP3, about the different testing, about different vaccines. Not because we were really interested in science, but because we wanted to keep our cities running and protect our citizens. And we were just trying to put together our resiliency and going back on track programs when we see the prices of energy soaring. Try to understand what's happening, learning new terms like greenflation, climateflation, and a new term, fossilflation. And then Russia attacked Ukraine, and now we mayors are learning supply chain disruptions. What does it mean in my reality running a city? It means that when I want to purchase 13,000 different repair parts to keep public transport running in a city like Budapest, most of the repair parts are on this route of this supply chain, which is disrupted. So yes, in the past 2.5 years, we mayors all around Europe were looking a lot inside of our feet, keeping our cities running. But why is our community good, the Committee of the Regions and all this covenant of mayors and this mayors community? Is because we remind ourselves that we have to look up from time to know and see where actually we want to be going. And after the pandemic, we were moving back on the green track, and now this is what we're trying to do and help each other. We have a lot of mayors who are ambitious, because I tell you a lot about all the dark clouds in the sky. So there is a silver lining. We have tens, thousands of mayors in the European Union who are committed to the European climate goals, have their own plans, and do their best even more than their nation states do. So we know what to do. We have a lot of ambitious local leaders. We have a lot of engaged citizens. But what we see is this doesn't work on our own. So we need all levels, we need the national levels, we need the European levels, and we need a strong support for the local level so these plans and this track will be a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, all three of you, and especially Mrs. Tütto, for giving us a very practical insight in how the three crises interacted with each other. While the lectern is now being removed, we will start with our debate. I have to sit here because apparently this makes more sense. So I'm very sorry, I'm a bit away, but for the audience, the online audience, they will not see that I'm so far away. but this still should be hopefully a very collegial and interactive panel. And I would like to put a few questions, obviously, and you feel free to react to your colleagues as well. But I would start with the Commissioner, and of course this is a little bit biased because I'm the Director General, so asking him about what would be the biggest achievements in the last 2 years is a little bit awkward for me now to put. But I mean, despite all the crisis, one has to be serious. We do have had a lot of legislation being put forward. So we would like to hear from you, what are the moments that you considered especially important?
So it's a good question for us also to have a sort of our discussion on agenda and a way forward.
Yes.
But no, to be very honest, first of all, I'm extremely proud that despite the crisis mode, which is constantly on within this commission, if I had a blank page to write how I imagine upcoming 5 years as a commissioner, I would be so wrong. But despite that, our agenda is going forward. And so I'm very, very, very proud and really due to through very difficult times of first of all, pandemics, people in our DGs supporting our work really worked very hard, despite returning to office, not returning to office, working online and adjusting to all of that. And we managed to put some significant proposals forward. So I would like to highlight two. So one is, of course, deforestation legislation. I think it's a groundbreaking, and it's the biggest single nature protection act that has been ever put. And if you talk about, some legacy of your work, we do not realize it yet because it's still in trialogues and so on. But I think when it will be working, when it will be implemented, it's going to do a great work for our planet, not only for Europe. And I just had the meetings at G7. This is the legislation which is puts us in forward position across the globe. So I'm of course extremely proud and extremely thankful that we managed to go ahead with it. The second one, of course, is our eco-design changes on sustainable products. Because as with my background of Minister of Economy, changing the way our economy functions through the environmental portfolio, it's quite a task. But I think this is the proposal, where we actually going from linear model to a circular model, where we want to introduce a completely different practices, understanding, and most importantly, give a lot of tools in the hands of consumers. So they would have a full picture and informed choices. And that's why part of our Green Week, our eco-label as well, the EU eco-label, which we are very proud of, which has still, I think, a lot of untapped potential in those 30 years, and I'm pretty sure we'll monetize its potential pretty soon. So I would say these two, but all the others are very important as well. So.
Okay, thank you. And I must say, oof, this question went fine, so I'm relieved. But I think we have in the audience also a lot of our colleagues, so they will be inspired by what you said. But you're right, these are the most transformative proposals, not only in Europe, but also obviously globally. Talking about global impact, Minister Strilat, you already mentioned the enormous devastation caused by the war, oil spills, nuclear, but you spoke of ecocide, about health implications, and as we said, long-lasting, well, whenever, hostilities stop. And even though it's premature, but we would like to know from you, how do you prepare for the day after, for the green recovery, and how can we help?
Thank you for your question. Я хотів би відповісти.
I would like to answer in my native language, in Ukrainian. And I would like to say that indeed, from the first days of war, we're registering all the eco-crimes, environmental crimes, which the country aggressor is incurring imposing on our land. We already informed you that we registered 254 cases of ecocide. We also have other examples of negative effect on the environment. Our land is losing this potential. These are economic aftermath where we won't be able to monetize later from. We'll be negatively affected from the loss of some fertile lands, some assets of protected environment, and huge amount of forest just burned, which was just burnt and which was has been growing for dozens of years. For this, Russia should be held responsible, should be held accountable. But now we're working in environmental front as well. Our armed forces are fighting the invaders while we're preparing to reform, to rebuild our country. We understand that Ukraine should be reformed on the basis of circular economy, on the green economy. We shouldn't be dependent on the fossil fuel, and indeed we should have modern European standards. I'm asking for assistance, and we've been talking about that today at our meetings in terms of the estimates, assessment to what extent we can comply with modern environment standards existing in modern Europe, and to assist us in drafting a roadmap which would assist us to comply to those standards, so that our cities, which we rebuilt after the bombardments, would be rebuilt on the basis of the environment assessment, would be assessed in terms of the impact on the environment, and would be built on with the help of modern technologies. Today we have a special staff on losses. Tomorrow they will become operational staff. They will be accepting all the requests for LIFE program and from other programs, who will be ready to assist in rebuilding the environment system of Ukraine, because Ukraine is Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think I speak also on behalf of the Commissioner that I can reassure you that we will do what we can, not just DG Environment, but also all the other services from research to DG NEAR and others in partnership on, first of all, monitoring, help you in monitoring, help you in assessing, and then help you in identifying the right projects, because that's, I think, our common agenda now. Let me turn to Mrs. Tüto, because you reassured us of the commitment, the continued commitment of regions. At the same time, we do know that regions now face a lot of crisis at the same time, right? Coming just out of COVID, and some still had to, grapple with COVID fallouts, which was very costly. And now refugees, very high energy prices. Do you think environment, you said we are staying on course, but do you see that some are reprioritizing? How do they cope as municipalities with these three multiple challenges at the same time? And how can we make them stay on course?
It is a challenge. So I'll try to be optimistic and positive, but it's not an easy thing. So this is why the European Committee of the Regions, with all the mayors and local representatives, this is why the Covenant of Mayors, which is a movement of mayors, is trying to build a community to keep everyone in. Because the challenges we face daily is really not about 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's about, I have no idea how I will feed my district heating system in December, because it's all dependent on Russian gas. So I don't know how I will buy repair parts for my buses and trams and metros. Yes, and it's not just me. Most of our mayors are facing things like we have open public procurement tenders and there are no bidders, nobody. So we want to build, we have the strategies, we want to buy electric vehicles, we want to invest in refurbishment of houses, but there's no one in the market who will do it because of the strict conditions of public procurement procedure. So yes, we face these things, and I don't have the answer yet. But we are sharing all of our struggles with the nation states and with the European Commission because we need more flexibility. When we put out our plans to be in line with the Paris goals 2.5 years ago, we said, okay, we need X billion euros and we need 10 years. Now we see that it has to be within a few years, and it will cost not 10 billions, but it will cost who knows what. We cannot even tag it, and we don't know how to do it. So now everybody is replanning, but okay, what do? We see good examples. We share these good examples. We keep our mayors in because they have to keep their citizens in. And I think that's very important because we are expecting a lot of changes from our citizens. We want them to leave our cars. We want them to live in smaller apartments. We want them to turn off the heating, turn off the cooling. We want them to eat less, to waste nothing, recycle everything, change everything within a very, very short time. And you can only do that if you engage these people daily, and that's not an easy task to do. So having this community, putting all the Green Deal into little bites, this is what we do. Green Deal going local, try to localize it, tear it into little pieces, having more people come in, doing participatory budgets, doing climate assemblies, to have as many people on board because it won't be easy times the next upcoming months. Thank you.
Yes, I think you're painting a little bit of a bleak picture, but at the same time you give us hope because I think at the same time colleagues and people are realizing that there are other looming crises, and that brings me to the Commissioner because some of the descriptions sound quite familiar, and we have to be aware that we are not making trade-offs on the wrong side. How would you see that? What are the biggest challenges you are facing? Because these are some of the challenges we are also facing under the RRF. We are redirecting some of the money in order to help, but some hard choices sometimes have to be made.
I probably would, first of all, take this situation as a lesson. As a lesson that when you do not do what was necessarily, earlier on, sort of prepare for and build in resilience, then you have to do it almost overnight. And it's extremely hard. And of course, most likely as a politician, you will have a high price to pay because for people to sort of go over a significant change overnight is very difficult. And I can see it from, for example, excluding Russian fossil fuels from member states' energy mix. Those who managed to exclude it, they did that homework 15 years ago, started, and now it was, let's say, finalized. And those who actually went a different direction while talking about excluding fossil fuels in some, distant time of period, now really facing a very difficult choices, uncertainty, and those issues they only piling up. So on one hand, of course, I want our discussion to be positive, but we cannot live that COVID sort of effect for the second time, because with COVID I constantly had the feeling that society expects that the moment we have vaccine, we wake up and there is no COVID. So same here, society sort of expecting that war in Ukraine ends, we have peace, and then everything is back to normal. The prices, the inflation, we don't have the pressure on food prices, on petrol prices, on heating, and etc. that's not going to happen. We have to realize that the consequences of this devastating war will be long for us, and that change, which we have to go over now, which we are talking about as a plan, and one of those changes is just, a very simple thing, is actually energy efficiency, which we were not talking enough about, I think. We'll have to do it inevitably. So I think it's a big challenge when you have to do it overnight, but I think we have a good compass. We have our Green Deal, which sets a very clear plan to 2030 and then plan to 2050. And what's most important, that maybe we were the first ones to start this economies club of decarbonizing economies, but now we're not alone. And there more and more countries around the planet is joining, and it shows that we're doing the right thing.
Absolutely, and I think it's also positive to look ahead, because it's not just all due to the war and the Russian aggression. It is also still the supply chain, energy price, other things which were coming from the COVID. Listening to all of this, Minister, when you are planning for the green rehabilitation, a green reconstruction, that could, of course, also in the long run make you much more sustainable, much more, your country more future-proof, and basically you could now reap some of the best innovations. What would you expect from Europe and others in that context for the green rehabilitation reconstruction?
Before the start of the war, we had respective plans. We had not only an implementation plan to implement the European acquis into our legislation, we also adopted a number of strategic documents that would have helped us to adapt to the climate change issues. We have passed and adopted strategic documents that allowed us to embark on the path of rejecting fossil fuels. But overnight, everything has been ruined. On one side, on one hand, we have lost our plans disappeared. On the other hand, we became the only country in the world that overcame COVID over one day, overnight. But that is now moved to the back burner. Today, the most important issue for us is the issue of safety and security of our people and our environment, and the issue of help for us to win this war. A lot of countries in the world are helping us with weapons and funds and money and support and advice. And that is very valuable, important for us. In the context of what has been said by Commissar Sienkiewicz, the important thing today is to reject fossil fuels usage, to renounce it. And I should say every euro that is paid to the Russians for Russian oil and gas, it's funding the death of Ukrainians. And we are calling upon you to enhance these sanctions against the aggressor so that the civilized world would win in this very difficult, perhaps third world war. On the 28th of February, President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, signed an application to join the European Union for Ukraine. That included the fact that our ministry has put together and passed it on to the European Commission a questionnaire to as one of the steps to join the EU. And I call upon everybody to support that future decision and indeed make Ukraine part of this big civilized family. Because this important step today will show the confidence that the EU has in Ukraine's victory in this war. And all those things that we are now receiving from the European Commission and from the European Commissar and from your Director General, I'd like to know specifically Ms. Hanna Moskva, the Minister for Ecology in Poland. She talks to us on a daily basis and provides us with a very practical help. If this help is going to continue, then it will bring victory of the civilized world on a daily basis over the empire tradition and barbaric behavior against the future of the humankind and the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And this is exactly, I think, what our heads of state and government are now discussing as we speak here at the European Council as well. And I must say we were very impressed how quickly your authorities were able to respond to our questionnaire. So that was very impressive, being in a war. So thank you for that. Last question to Mrs. Tito. As you represent the Committee of the Region, having heard all of the interventions now, any advice from the Committee of the Region as a mechanism on making the Green Deal real?
Oh, absolutely. I always have a lot of ideas, and I'm looking at the commissioner. So, okay, what we see in the reality is that it's good to stand on more pillars than standing on less pillars. If we look at diversifying many things, if we diversify the pillars we stand on and we put the Green Deal on, and when I think of it, I think of, in my case, the regions and the cities. So the more strong local level you have, the more strong mayors you have, the stronger regions you have, you will have stronger legs, which means financial strength. It means this authority in decision making. But if you have this, it doesn't matter if a state thinks something different. Their cities and regions will keep going. And this is what we see in many regions now in the European Union, that in a lot of places, it's actually cities who are pushing the green agenda. So strengthening the local level, strengthening the role of the Committee of the Regions, and strengthening and maybe direct financing cities, that could be a big help and a big push.
And I think this is also what would have to happen then in Ukraine as well. And thank you very much for that insight. I have to look at the clock, and it's getting already red. So I have to now speed up a little bit. But what I take from this discussion already is we are all aware of immense challenges. Of course, in Ukraine, the challenges are enormous, but also they are in Europe and elsewhere in the world. And we all have a collective, nevertheless, ambition to overcome these challenges. And I think when I started, I said we have immediate crisis, but we also definitely have solutions for the long term, and we don't have to lose sight of that. Because of the timing and the clock, can I just ask, before I close officially, ask each of you just to say with one word or a half sentence a takeaway, a message that you want to give to the audience and also the online audience. I start with Minister Strilet.
Дякую.
Thank you. I would like to thank for the opportunity to be in this conference hall, and I'd like to thank for the invitation. I'd like to thank for the opportunity to be heard and to be able to convey to you the information about what's going on in Ukraine these days. I would like to mention as well the course, the path that we have embarked on is going to be a green one, similar to this Green Week. I do believe and I trust that after we win in this war in Ukraine, we will have not just a green week, we'll have a green epoch. And I understand that all the obstacles that were impeding our implementation of modern green technologies, the industrial lobby or any other factors are being basically annihilated by the war, are being erased by the war. And while our armed forces are fighting at the front, we have to fight to introduce the rules that will never be destroyed after the war. Nobody will be able to destroy them after. I do hope for your support, and I'm very grateful to all of those who provide not only a methodological support, but also humanitarian, financial support, and sometimes just a friendly call. And I'd like to thank the European Commissioner and everybody present here. Everything is going to be Ukraine.
Mrs. Tito, can I ask you for a closing statement, a word or a short sentence?
It will be short. So after all the challenges I was talking about and dark clouds, it's a recent thing. There are like 100 European cities who, in the middle of this crisis, volunteered to become climate neutral much earlier than was already planned. So I think this is a positive thing, and this is a real thing to show that there is strength and cities are going on the green path.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Right, so I'll be very brief. First of all, I think despite these challenges and the constant crisis mode on, we're managing to make the Green Deal, to make it real Green Deal on the ground. And what's most important, taking this, let's say, forward-looking view, approach, we managed to get others on board. And there is going to be multiple challenges. And the implementation never is going to be straightforward and easy. But I think these crises that are trying to bash the Green Deal, they're just proving how actually resilient it is. So I believe that we are on the right side of the history, not only implementing Green Deal, but defending Ukraine, bringing it close to the European family. And I think this only means that the matters, the values that we're defending, they're going to win at the end of the day. And we're all going to share that right side of the history, which is going to be green and peaceful for all.
Thank you so much. And I think that was a great start of the Green Week, because you all gave us support, inspiration, and I take a lot also inspiration by the minister, because if you now already say we want to be on the green path, it means we're all on the right path, and I think this is where we will be leading and will want to make our societies future-proof, not only Europe, the wider Europe, and also then globally. So thank you so much. I think this is the best way to start our Green Week. I have to say before I close, we still have a few minutes, I have to say stay tuned, because it is not totally over with just the start, and we will have in 30 minutes the Life Awards. So that's also a very special occasion to look back and celebrate what has been achieved, and take motivation from it to really embark and stay on the course for the future where we really need it. So a big round of applause for our panelists, and thank you for the interpreters.